They say curiosity killed the cat, but in this case, it was the CIA that was trying to kill the cat, or at least train them to be little spy kittens. This is Project Acoustic Kitty, one of the strangest programs ever undertaken by the intelligence community, and it involved turning felines into little ninja assassins. After World War II, tensions were high between the United States and the Soviet Union. It was the beginning of the Cold War, and the threat of nuclear war loomed large over the world. Both sides amassed weapons of mass destruction and searched for any advantage they could get over their ideological enemy. For the U.S., that meant exploring even the most outlandish ideas, such as training animals to do its bidding. For decades, the CIA engaged in various projects involving critters like monkeys, dogs, and even camels. But none were more audacious than Acoustic Kitty. Like many CIA operations, the origins of Acoustic Kitty are murky and classified. But we know that the idea first came up in 1963. The CIA had already been experimenting with training animals to be spies, and they needed a small, quiet critter that could enter places without being seen or heard. Cats seemed like the perfect choice. They're great at sneaking around and they can hear really well, which made them ideal candidates for listening devices. But there was a problem. How do you get a cat to do what you want it to? At first, the CIA tried to enlist the help of animal experts at the American Museum of Natural History. But after some inconclusive experiments, the project was transferred to a classified research facility, where scientists began to develop ways to train cats to be little agents of the government. One method involved teaching cats to press a lever when they heard a particular sound. By rewarding them with food when they did so, the CIA hoped to condition the cats to associate the sound with a tasty treat. Once trained, these feline operatives would then be equipped with a recording device and let loose in the Soviet Union. The idea was that they would essentially be tiny spies that could record everything happening around them, from secret meetings to military drills. The recordings would then be sent back to the CIA for analysis. But training cats proved difficult. Sure, they're smart and curious creatures, but they're also notoriously independent and not easily controlled. Plus, putting a tiny recorder on a cat is no easy feat. You can imagine the CIA lab was filled with meows of frustration and the sound of scratching, post-diplomacy. Despite the challenges, the CIA pressed on. By 1968, they had developed several different methods for training cats, including one that involved teaching them to sit on a mat while wearing a headset. Some cats were taught to stay perfectly still for hours, while others were trained to walk around carrying small objects. But there was still a major obstacle. The CIA needed to figure out how to get these cats into the Soviet Union. After all, it wasn't exactly possible to just let them roam across the border. The solution was to smuggle the cats in via friendly European countries, specifically Italy and Spain. From there, the cats would be released and make their way to Moscow, where they would begin their spying operations. Well, that was the theory anyway. In reality, things didn't quite go according to plan. By 1969, the CIA had spent over $100,000 on Project Acoustic Kitty and had trained dozens of cats. But they soon realized that using felines as spies was trickier than they thought. First of all, cats are not great at keeping secrets. They're naturally curious creatures and can't help but explore their surroundings, which meant that the CIA couldn't just let them loose in Moscow and hope for the best. If they were discovered, the cats could have easily bolted or worse, attracted attention to themselves by hissing or scratching someone. Plus, there was the risk that the cats would simply wander off and never return with any intelligence to report. To make matters worse, the CIA soon discovered that the cats weren't very good at staying hidden. They were too big to crawl through small spaces, and their presence was often betrayed by their meows or the sound of their claws on the floor. So it became clear that the cats would need to be accompanied by a human handler at all times. But that just made the whole operation even more complicated. How could a human handler follow a cat around without being seen? And what if the cat decided to run off with a cute stray or chase a mouse? As it turned out, Project Acoustic Kitty was doomed to fail. By 1973, the CIA had spent over $250,000 on the program and had nothing to show for it. They abandoned Acoustic Kitty later that year, but not before one last bizarre twist. According to declassified documents, the CIA considered euthanizing the cats rather than letting them go free. But the scientists working on the project argued against it, saying that the cats should be allowed to live out their natural lives. So instead, the CIA simply neutered the cats and released them into the wild. It's unclear what happened to them after that, but maybe they lived out the remainder of their days chasing mice and napping in the sun, completely oblivious to their role in one of the CIA's weirdest experiments. In the end, Project Acoustic Kitty was a total failure. Not only did the cats never provide any useful intelligence, but they also cost the CIA a lot of money and resources. Yet it's hard not to feel a little bad for the poor felines who were essentially kidnapped, trained and used as unwitting pawns in the Cold War. Imagine being a cat who wakes up one day to find yourself in a strange place, separated from your owner and forced to wear a strange headset. Then you're given food rewards when you hear a certain sound. effectively trained to become a spy. You're then smuggled to a foreign country where you're set loose to gather intel. Of course, that's exactly what the CIA intended, but it's hard not to sympathize with these poor animals who were caught in the middle of a global conflict. Now, you might be wondering why the CIA did just use other animals, like dogs or monkeys for the Acoustic Kitty project. After all, those animals are smarter and easier to train than cats. But the CIA likely chose cats because they're smaller, quieter, and more agile than other animals. They also figured that cats would be less likely to attract attention in a Soviet city. The truth is, the CIA has a long history of using animals for espionage. During World War II, for example, the agency trained cats to detect landmines and sniff out hidden explosives. They also experimented with using bats as listening devices and monkeys to gather intel behind enemy lines. But perhaps the most famous example of animal espionage occurred during the Vietnam War. Between 1965 and 1973, the CIA trained over 600 pigeons to carry messages from downed pilots to the safety of friendly forces. The pigeons were equipped with tiny backpacks that contained coded messages and were released near enemy lines. Despite the danger, the pigeons successfully delivered their messages more than 90% of the time. As for what happened to the animals used in these experiments, it's unclear. Some were reportedly released into the wild, while others were kept in captivity for further training. But one thing is for sure, they played an important role in some of the most top-secret missions of the Cold War. Looking back, it's hard to believe that the CIA really thought training cats to be spies was a viable plan. But then again, that's the thing about spy stories. They're full of twists and turns that you never see coming. Just goes to show that real life can be stranger than fiction.